worries. Welcome to Mindful Looking, the Art of Mindfulness. Today is Mindful Looking, where we're using works of art from the Lowe's collection. And as you know, Mindful Looking is a university and community offering established by the Lowe in collaboration with the University of Miami School of Law's Mindfulness in Law program. And it's also in partnership with Mindful Time, which is a local organization in Coral Gables. And we are grateful to have Scott Rogers on the call with us today and every time. Scott is a professor at the University of Miami School of Law and the founder and director of its Mindfulness in Law program. He co-founded and co-directs U Mindfulness and has been sharing mindfulness insights and practices across the U since 2004. And I'm equally grateful for my colleague and partner, Hope Torrance, who's also on the call. She's the school programs coordinator at the Lowe Art Museum with 20 years in the museum field. And Hope has been leading mindful looking sessions at the Lowe for the past 2 years. I am Jodi Sypher. I'm the curator of education at the Lowe Art Museum since 2007. I've also been leading mindful looking sessions at the Lowe for the past 2 years. So again, I think everyone knows by now, but I don't really see, I see that we have our people that keep returning, which we're very grateful for. If you can please keep your microphone on mute during the session, we appreciate it. And at the end, we will have time for reflection and questions. We'll use the chat feature for that. And what we're going to do, as usual, is Scott Rogers is going to give us an introduction into the practice, and then I will begin with one work of art, and Hope will continue with a related work of art today, and we'll tell you some more about why we chose them at the end as normal, and we'll give you time again for reflections and questions. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Scott.
Thank you, Jodi and Hope, and everyone at the Lowe, and everyone who's joining for our time together to be together and to explore this thing called mindfulness in relationship to something as extraordinary as art in the various forms that we draw upon and that the Lowe Art Museum has as part of its extraordinary collection. You know, mindfulness is being attentive to, waking up, seeing more clearly, in doing so, feeling more at ease, less scattered, less emotionally reactive, because we're able to hold steadier around whatever it is that's actually taking place. Even if what's taking place is challenging, we're there for it. But it's so easy to turn away from what's happening because it can be unsettling, because it can be unpleasant, uncomfortable. And here we draw upon a work of art to steady our attention, to captivate us, and yet to captivate us in a way that is mutual, that we are interested in the piece and we are engaging in it in a meaningful, interactive way, the way we'd like to, with people in our midst, and with the work that we have, and with the beauty that's often right in front of us that we often miss. And so we'll begin with a grounding practice, a practice that draws upon the breath, a traditional mindfulness practice that has the object of our attention be turned inward to the body, to the breath, however you choose. And then after setting a foundation that perhaps allows us to see, to perceive, to be present with a little bit more stability through that practice, we then turn outward, guided as we will be by Jodi and Hope, while maintaining an inward engagement and aliveness so that there's a balancing and a coherence of ourself in relationship to our experience. So let us begin this mindful looking practice by looking within, feeling within, by bringing ourselves into a posture that's upright and stable. And if you should be laying down, that's fine, to be reclining in a way that's comfortable. aware of the posture. So in whatever form this posture takes, it's that we are attentive to, aware of. That is the beginning of this inward looking as we breathe. Aware of the sensations arising in the body from head to toes, side to side, belly to back. Aware of where our body makes contact with what's beneath us, behind us. Aware of the sensations arising in and around the hands and fingers. We're directing our attention where we choose. The hands. Down to the feet, making contact with the ground or our shoes. Aware of this body, not just sitting, but moving with the breath. The torso expanding, the rib cage lifting on the in-breath, softening on the out-breath. And because it can be helpful for achieving a more steady, relaxed state, taking a few slower, deeper breaths. 3, as we breathe in and out. Breathing in a little fuller, a little deeper, a little bit more slowly. And breathing out a fuller exhalation, almost as if squeezing out the air. Slow, tempered, breathing in and breathing out. You may notice a subtle shift that you brought about through the breath. And now we allow this breath to resume its natural pacing and rhythm, whatever that may be. We're no longer trying to change anything or even to feel differently. Rather, by attending to the next several breaths that flow through your body as they flow, and when you notice your mind wandering, which you have and which you will again, gently returning to the breath. We slowly become a little bit more present. And as we close this practice, in a few moments, when we lift our gaze, open our eyes, we will have before us a work of art, and our attention will be drawn to it. Let us stay attentive to our attention. Let us remain aware of our experience, including the felt sense of the body. Sitting as we breathe. And when you're ready in the next moment or two, with an awareness of doing so, lifting the gaze, opening the eyes.
Allow your eyes to take in this photograph. Just attend to it, as Scott said, for a moment. Let your eyes sweep over the entire picture, letting them stop wherever interests you. As you continue to breathe normally, I invite you to start at the top of the photograph and focus your attention there. You can choose a line to follow in this photograph from the top. Very slowly let your eyes sweep from the top of the image to the middle and down to the bottom. Choosing a line, it can be a darker line or a lighter line. It could be a white line created by the flowing water or a thicker line created by the water hitting the rocks. Let your eye slowly follow from one line to another, from top to bottom. And when you've reached the bottom of the photograph, allow your eye to slowly make its way back up to the top of the image, following another line or another path of lines. Once you've made your way back up to the top, focus your attention on the top left corner. Find the diagonal line that's created by the rocks, the edge of the rocks, and slowly, very slowly, allow your eye to trace that line from the top left. It's a diagonal line to the right edge of the photograph. And once you reach the right side, move your way down a little bit slightly to the top middle of the photograph and follow the next line that you can see, the next diagonal line, slowly back over to the left side. Continue your way down the photograph to the middle, to the next diagonal line, created by the rocks and water, from left to right. And finally down to the very bottom of the photograph, letting your eye follow the white diagonal line that's created by the water at the bottom, back up to the left side. And when you find that your mind has wandered from the diagonal lines, just notice where it went, be aware of where your mind went, and gently bring your attention back to the photograph. Once you're at the bottom of the photograph, spend some time focusing on that area of white that's there. As you breathe, now sweep over the entire photograph, looking from one area of white to other areas of white. Now focus on the dark shadow areas of the photograph. You can find a shape that's created by the black dark contrast areas, and focus your attention on that shape or area. Let your eye move from one dark or black contrast area of the photograph to another, as we did with the white. Now allow your eye to take in the entire photograph again. This time look for areas of texture. It could be the rough texture of the rocks, or the soft, hazy texture of the white water spraying off the rocks, and the silky smooth lines of the running water. This photographer spent a long time at this site of nature. He wanted to capture a moment in time. He was being very mindful himself. Imagine yourself in front of this scene. Allow yourself to connect with nature. What sounds might you hear if you were there at this scene? Perhaps you even hear sounds around you, wherever you are. Allow yourselves to focus on either the sounds you do hear or the sounds you imagine you might hear if you were there. Now allow yourself to imagine the temperature you might feel if you were in front of this scene, or could even touch the water. Now allow yourself to take in the entire photograph again. And let your eye move to wherever it wants to go. And I'll ask you to lower your gaze or close your eyes as we switch to the next related work of art. Take a moment, take a deep breath in, and remember the scene that you just looked at. Take another deep breath in and a slow exhale out. And one more deep breath in and a slow exhale out your mouth. When you're ready, you can lift your gaze, open your eye, and we'll turn it over to Hope.
Thank you, Jodi. I invite you now to take in the photograph in front of you. Explore it from top to bottom, left to right. Just run your eyes over the entire photograph. And now I invite you to direct your attention to the bottom right-hand corner of the photograph, noting the foliage. And if you choose, you can choose one leaf or you can choose the entire bunch of leaves. And observe the nooks and crannies, the separation of some of the leaves, and pay particular attention to the light and how the light is hitting those leaves. Move your eyes as if you could actually go into those leaves, running along the stems. And go at your own pace. And if you choose to stop and rest your eyes in one area at the bottom right-hand corner, stay there and take in that light. And now I invite you to run your eyes up the right side of the photograph, slowly or at your own pace, noting where the light hits the right side of the photograph. And when you reach the top of the photograph, rest there. It's fairly dark, so we need to focus in on where exactly the leaves, the foliage hits the frame of the window, hits the frame of the house. And when you reach the top of the photograph, I direct your attention to the wooden beam running from the top to the bottom, not hitting exactly the bottom, but move your eyes down that wooden beam. Again, noting the light, even the grain of the wood. Move at your own pace, and if your eyes and mind are starting to move in a different direction or wander, it's perfectly all right. Gently bring yourself back to that wood, that beam, that light, the grain. And now I would like to direct your attention to the figure standing before you. Noting his right arm, his hand, how it rests on that beam. Move your eyes across that broad shoulder to the other side, to the other shoulder, down the arm. Noticing the position of both his hands, of his arms, how they rest. And now I invite you to closely look at his face. Maybe beginning at the top of his head, the glasses resting on his head, his expression. What is he saying? What is he conveying? The white beard. And now I direct your attention to what he's wearing. What might that say about who he is? Now I invite you to zoom out and again take in the whole image, beginning with the leaves and the foliage in the right-hand corner, looking at the man who's standing behind there, moving to the plate glass window. What's behind that window? Seems to be a wall. Observe the separation of the indoor environment from the outdoor environment. If you could step inside that indoor environment, what might you find? What might that tell us about who this figure is? Who is the artist standing before the figure? And what was the interest in creating this scene? What are your thoughts now? What is the effect of the monochromaticness of this image? The shading, the light and the dark are magnified. And now I invite you to choose an area in this photograph where you'd like to stay, just sit and rest. You have the freedom to move about. You are an observer. And you can move about at your own pace and choose another area to remain. As you're resting, I invite you to take a deep breath in and breathe out. Note where your shoulders are. Note your posture. Maybe roll your head around a couple times, get the kinks out of your neck. And just take a deep breath in. And breathe out. Again, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Jodi.
Thank you, Hope. I'm gonna ask you to, one more time, focus on the first image. And as you do, think about the person, the man that you just saw in the last photograph, as he is the photographer of this image in front of you. We just spent some time mindfully focusing on the man who took this photograph in front of you. Allow your eye again to sweep over the image and take it in wherever your eye wants to go. The photographer said, "For me, I can get a greater sense of color through a well-planned and executed black and white image than with color photography." As you look upon this image, what colors arise for you? And again, what sounds might you hear if you were there? I invite you to choose a section of this photograph that intrigues you most and spend some time in that detail. I invite you one more time to close this practice with a few slow, deep breaths. Take a deep breath in. And if you wish, you can lower your eyes or lower your gaze or close your eyes. Take a slow exhale out. And another deep breath in and a slow exhale out. And when you feel ready, there's no rush. You can lift your eyes, lift your gaze or open your eyes. I invite you to use the chat feature now to make any comments or observations on your practice, anything that you noticed, or any questions you have. And after we do that, we will, as usual, tell you about this artist and this work, these two works of art from the Lowe's collection.
That's wonderful, Sarah, commenting on, as a photographer, the experience, and now sort of the motivation, the inspiration for doing some with her own work. And that said, given familiarity with the images. And so that speaks to really being present for them in a way that's new as well, or else the inspiration probably wouldn't be so robust.
I apologize again about the background noise. We're in a small home and my husband was on a call. So I wonder, Scott, if you might address how, as I've often asked you in person, how to handle being mindful with noises that that you do not find pleasing or distracting.
Well, of course, as many of you probably would know, if the question were put to you, you would note that there was a sound that wasn't pleasing. And you would feel and be present for an experience that wasn't pleasing, or in maybe your case, Jodi, wishing it weren't happening, resisting it because maybe you're conscientious, but that's what's going on in your mind. If it was a bird chirping, or if it was the sound of water trickling, we'd probably go, oh, how lovely. And so the fact that it's a sound that's unexpected or undesired is sort of secondary to our relationship to it. So we're either resisting our experience subtly or not so subtly, or we're open to our experience. And so there's no right or wrong answer, except to be aware of the resistance. And oftentimes, if you come wanting a relaxing experience, or you want to be able to focus, you'll have sounds be regarded as something getting in the way. Our mindfulness practice welcomes them, because life is filled with things getting in the way, but that's actually life happening. And so this is a practice that, while we certainly would like to have environments the way we'd like to have them, there's nothing wrong with wanting a cleaner environment, but then to be open for what happens. So it's a wonderful question, Jodi. And the powerful thing to me was your delivery stayed very grounded and very present. And we're looking to you to guide us. And I thought you guided us very well in the midst of that.
Thank you.
And Enid notes how her attention was drawn to the waterfall, or a portion, and she allowed herself to explore its many abstractions. And Anna notes that at the Lowe itself, right, it doesn't matter where you are, we would point out and focus on the outside noises. It was incorporated into our practice. See, there's no denying that it's incorporated into our life. The only question is whether we are amenable to reality as it is. And that doesn't mean that we don't have a little bit of a practice to do around this, but that's where the practice becomes helpful. Ah, life happening. And Bert has a question about where the animal figure or human figures in the first photo. So in a moment, we'll turn to a little bit more information about those photos. Perhaps now could be a good time to do that.
Okay. Yes, and I see that Olga is saying that she was attracted to the reflection of the trees and the wood in the window of the artist's photo. It made me think of what is there but not seen. So that brings me more to the information and who this is. This photograph is of the artist Ansel Adams, photographer, in his studio in Carmel. It was taken by Arnold Newman. And we have a collection, a wonderful collection of works, prints, photographs by Arnold Newman that were a gift of the artist. And is why we have our Newman annual photography lecture series from a generous fund from the Newman Foundation that's run by Arnold Newman's sons. So he knew Ansel Adams very well, and Arnold Newman is known for his environmental portraiture, meaning that the photograph is not just, it's a posed photograph, of course, but he's thinking about what he wants to say about the person he's photographing. And he purposely put him against the outside of his studio, framed against the window with the reflection of the trees, as nature was so important to his work. And Arnold Newman actually lived in Miami for a while, had a studio, and he went to the University of Miami. Unfortunately, he didn't get to graduate because he had to leave due to finances. But here is an actual picture of Arnold Newman taking the photograph you saw of Ansel Adams in his studio in Carmel. And here's a picture of Arnold and Ansel together. And this is the photograph by Ansel Adams that's in our collection. It's called Fern, Spring, Dusk. It's from 1961. He took the photograph in 1961, but this particular print was printed in 1974. And it's a gift of Denise and Philip Gerson. Denise, as many of you know, was the associate director of the Lowe for many years. And we are very grateful for that. I did want to let you know, again, this quote that I completely agree with. I can get, for me, a far greater sense of color through a well-planned and executed black and white image than I ever achieved with color photography, Ansel said. And the art critic Nancy Newell said he helped us understand that photography is an art and that wilderness is a treasure. And that his extreme depth of focus and his extreme rendition of textures were a part of his photographs. And again, the fact that he was one of the first people to use the camera as a tool to sort of stop time at a precise moment, I thought was a really great connection to being mindful, and he certainly was. He is most known for his photographs in Yosemite National Park. So, if anyone has any other questions? Yes, Eleanor. So the water being frozen in time is because of the long exposure. He did not manipulate in the darkroom, definitely not. He was what you call sort of the believer in straight photography. So here's another picture of the kind of camera he used, Ansel. It was a large format camera. And here's him. They always see these pictures of him in his later years, but here he is in a younger year. There's a lot of information here. I got a little carried away. So, as I tend to do. I'm seeing a few more comments, which I appreciate. Liz is saying that her home space is by the window and it's open, and the traffic noise was heightened, but she tried to equate that sound with the falling water. So that's great.
There's a wonderful poem by Billy Collins called Why I Keep a Gun in the House, about a dog that's barking from the neighbor's house. And it's very clever, and he works in the dog's barking in a very clever way. And that is something that we can do. If we notice resistance, let's work with it. And that engages the creative mind and spirit. So it's a very useful thing to do. And of course, it requires awareness of the resistance in the first place to even make that pivot.
That's great. You'll have to send me that poem. I did want to include, this is everybody that goes to Yosemite now, of course, tries to take photographs like Ansel did. So here's the falls in color, just so you can see somebody else's interpretation of the same spot. I think the black and white is much stronger, but I did want to show you. And of course, I was personally inspired myself. I was not at Yosemite, but just last week, I went to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So here's mine. This is Grotto Falls on the Tennessee side.
Oh, and let that be an invitation to all of us when later today we turn on the faucet and the water flows out. That we put our hands in and we feel the coolness or the temperature and we hear the sound and we immerse in that experience. Every moment offers that to us. And these images, we don't have to go so far, even though they may not be as seemingly profoundly rich.
But we are lucky enough to live, most of us, I think, are in the greater Miami area, but wherever you are, I'm sure there's something that you could step outside and take a walk and notice the beautiful nature around you and hopefully be inspired. So we do have a few more minutes. If anyone has any further comments or questions or reflections, I do want to remind everyone that we are continuing. We will continue virtually with our mindfulness program. So if you do not already receive our emails, hopefully you do because you're on this, the way to sign up and receive the email for every week is to go to lowe.miami.edu and click on Join Mindfulness Email List. And then you fill out this very short form. The email goes out on Monday at about 11 or 11:30 to register for the following Tuesday. So please, if you know anyone that's interested, have them sign up for the email list. It's the only way to get the email. Thanks, Anna.
And Penelope made a very nice attribution of joy and pleasure to what you and Hope and everyone at the Lowe has offered us and offered us today.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you all next Tuesday at 1, which will be, is it next Tuesday is already August? Is that right? How'd that happen? So next Tuesday will actually be a traditional guided mindfulness practice without a work of art. It will be led by Alice Lash from Mindful Time. So we invite you to join us for that. And then we will be back every other Tuesday at 1 for a mindful looking with a work of art. We hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday.